you ever read fairy tales as a kid? If you're like me, you enjoyed these stories, and they were special places that you could start to talk about and think about right and wrong, good and bad, and what's healthy for you and your environment. So this one is inspired by fairy tales, and it's called Across the Way Lives a Fair Maiden. Across the way lives a fair maiden, let's call her Marian, a fitting name for a fitting princess who awaited her prince. Let's not say that fair maid Marian spent her time waiting idly. Nah, she made her way through the crowds, the crowded house in which she was born, the crowded beds full of brothers she had to fight to be seen, heard, and even recognized. In that crowd she was born to serve. Her brothers, the lords in training, she'd used to spark her skills of servitude. The big piece of meat, she'd be called to the slaughterhouse to collect it, bring it home, cook it, and serve it up to the men folks in her family. There was a pecking order, and she was way at the bottom. The dad, the man of the house, would get to choose the first, then the boys, last her mother and she. She did not take this lightly. Nah. Our dear fair maiden Marian always took note of the status of those around her. She'd easily be presented with a character that wanted to step on her on his way up. Even her little brother showed her that. She was taught deference to him. But don't think our dear fair maid Marian starved, or never tasted the flesh of the big piece of meat. She watched her mother closely, and the other women too. She took her slice even before it made it to the table. She perfected dry aging so she could even have hers more succulently in the privacy of her own time and space. While the menfolk were out saving the world, days after a delicious steak feast, one that she'd had every hand in preparing but wasn't permitted to take the biggest piece, she'd slice herself off a good chunk of the fillet and set it to dry. One day, while her brothers were off at school, her dad tending to his business in the world of men, she decided to have a little playtime to herself. While it may have appeared that the little fair maid Marian was playing dollhouse, she was actually making up characters in a scene, envisioning the household that she'd run one day. And in it, she and her daughters ate filet. Sometimes she'd wait weeks for the meat to mature. It gave her time to gather other supplies. Pickling the eggs she'd collected from the breakfast when her brothers had omelets. She'd stored some peppers, carrots, and cabbage too, in a concoction of vinegar and spices hidden in a dark corner in the cellar where her brothers were too afraid to go. In the boys' haste, they ignored the dark corner in the cellar. And so she began to collect a menagerie of foods for herself. So much that she soon had to invite her friends from near round and share. She'd started hosting tea parties for all the little maidens in the area who'd never been given the big piece of meat at home, nor had their educations been given any real attention. All the adults and all the kids around them seemed to agree. Girls were born to serve. She was to spend her childhood prettying herself up, plumping up her cheeks, bosom, and buttocks, learning to lock and twirl her hair, preserving her youth and chastity, awaiting some prince to come save her from this boredom. Her role was to become the consummate wife, as if his very kiss could make her a woman, something like Sleeping Beauty. She only needed to be smart enough to run a household, hold a conversation, stay pretty, and know when to stay silent, which is golden, she had been told. And if she mastered this, one day, a handsome young man would present her with a shiny diamond, and they lived happily ever after. Do you think happily ever after was enough for our dear fair maiden Marian? Heck no. Once she woke up from this nightmare that everybody else around her was telling her was supposed to be a dream, she saved herself. all that she learned from growing up at the bottom of the totem pole, that it taught her she was more than capable. Why should she hide her goodies in a dark corner in the cellar? Why can't the world see how deeply thinking she could be, running a world and a few side games on the side, while everybody else thought that she was worthless? She'd heard the story of Cinderella, but in one of her tea parties, she and her friends came up with an alternate ending, for they couldn't see happily ever after coming their way anytime soon. No fairy tale godmother had saved one girl's mama from her daddy's fist. No magic wand was waved to give any of their mothers a voice at their own tables. The end.